My name is Bruce Hamness. I was born in 1938, so I got a few years under my belt. I'm here to talk about my short time in the service. I was in the service from 61 to 63, active duty time, and then I had a reserve commitment, but the reserve was full, so I didn't have to join the reserve after I got out.
So Bruce, when you first went in, so where'd you go to school?
Okay, at that time we had the draft, and that was on everybody's mind. You all knew that you had to go someplace, sometime, and stuff. And I had four friends from high school, and they all enlisted in the Navy before they were 18, so they only had a 3-year commitment. But I chose to go to school. I went to NDSU. NDSU is a land-grant university school, and all land grants, it was mandatory that they had an ROTC program for the first 2 years you were there. It was the same at University of North Dakota also. And so I was part of that program, and then at the end of 2 years, then you could decide if you wanted to go on with the ROTC program, or you had met your commitment at that time. I decided to go ahead and go through the rest of the program. So we had our basic training in Fort Lewis, Washington, and so we went to Washington. And
How did you get to Washington, up to Fort Lewis, Bruce?
Yes, at Fort Lewis.
But did you take a train, plane?
No. I drove my car, and I had 3 other classmates with me, and so the 4 of us drove out to Fort Lewis and went through the basic training. I don't remember how long it was. I remember if it was 6 weeks or 2 months, but anyway, it took the summer of 1958.
And did you have rank while you were there?
No, we didn't. We were cadets.
Okay.
And so we went through the normal basic training where you did a lot of calisthenics, and you learned how to march and take commands and things. Went to the rifle range and fired your weapon.
What were your billets like? Were they wood, brick?
They were wood billets.
2-story?
I think they were left over from World War II. I think Fort Lewis was a basic training site during that period of time. So they just continued on. And anyway.
So you were cadets. Did you have other people who were regular Army people that were doing basic training and stuff at that time?
No. It was all people who had been part of the ROTC programs, and it was all structured around that.
Good.
And so, but anyway, we completed our basic training and came back and finished school, and we took more ROTC courses and had training and throughout the time. And then when we graduated is when we received our commission. And in the meantime, I had gotten married.
So your commission, did you get first lieutenant, second lieutenant?
I was commissioned as a second lieutenant.
Okay.
And then we graduated in the spring of '61, and my orders were to go to school go to my branch school. My branch was Armor, and that school's at Fort Knox, Kentucky. And so we were there on the 1st of July, and we spent 2 months there at Fort Knox because that was the armor school, what it was, tanks. And so we had to learn all about the tanks, and we had to fire the tanks, and we had a lot of similar basic training type stuff, some leadership training.
The tanks you were working with, what kind were they?
The ones that we trained on were called the M48A1s. They were the big tanks. They had a 90 millimeter gun, and they weighed about 50 ton. And four-man crew. And so we trained on that. And one of the things that was a little interesting to us at Fort Knox, they had, because they were training all of the new officers from the ROTC program there, they had a big apartment complex called New Garden. It was 8 stories high, and there was 30 apartments in each floor. So it was full of new lieutenants that had just got.
That's a lot of lieutenants in one place.
Yeah, that's a lot of lieutenants in one place. And it was an efficiency apartment. The bed folded out of the wall, and there was also in the wall set up there was the stove and the refrigerator, and very compact. And just a big one room is what it was, plus a bathroom. And that was your efficiency apartment.
And you said you were married at this time?
We were married, yes, yeah. So that was an interesting experience. New Garden also overlooked a depository, so we kept track of the gold while we were there. But anyway, just an aside. When I was done with, I had one friend from NDSU that was in that same course. So there was 2 of us from North Dakota State, and so we were together a lot in our off times. So at the end of that 2-month period, I went to my first duty station, which was at Fort Riley, Kansas. And so I drove to Fort Riley, Kansas, and I had option to take leave, and I decided not to, and to keep my leave until Christmas. And so when I arrived at Fort Riley, they were pleased that I had gotten there, because the next day there was a troop train leaving for Fort Irwin, California, and I could take charge of that. I was...
When you say troop train, what was all involved in that? Personnel, tanks?
Yeah. Fort Riley is not a very big military reservation, so the impact area isn't big enough so that they can fire tanks there. And so they had to go to a post where that was it, and that was Fort Riley, or Fort Irwin, California, which is close to the Nevada border, right next to Death Valley. Edwards Air Force Base is adjoining there, and it's desert. It's where they trained a lot of the troops prior to the Iraq War, because it's desert, is what it is. And so we would go out there, and that's where we would take our annual training test, where we would fire the tanks and conduct maneuvers and stuff like that. I was there 4 times in the 2 years I was in the service. Twice we went for our annual training test, and the troop train was for that, and 2 times we were for Army exercises, where we would play war
games
against another division. we would convoy all our wheeled vehicles out there, and there was over 100 in our unit, and
What type of vehicles were they?
well, the Jeeps and 3/4 tons and 2.5 tons and yeah, wheeled vehicles. You know, the standard wheeled vehicles that you would have for an army unit. So I was I was assigned to, because I was an armored branch. I was assigned to an armored unit on Fort Riley. Fort Riley had the 1st Division, and at that time the divisions were made up of battle groups. I think there was 5 battle groups, and then were attached. There was an armored battalion, a reconnaissance squadron, and an artillery battalion. And I was part of the 4th Cav, 1st Reconnaissance Squadron, which extends the arm of a division in war. Our unit was made up of in the cavalry. We don't have companies; we have troops. And I was in Troop B. I had a platoon in Troop B. My platoon consisted of 4 gun jeeps, where the 30 caliber gun is mounted in the back of the jeep. 2 tanks, and these were the light tanks. They were called the M41s. They're only 25 tons, so they're about half as big as the M48s, and they have a 76 millimeter gun, and they can go pretty fast. And then we had a personnel carrier with a 4.2 mortar or base plate as part of it. So that was our artillery unit. And then we had a squad of another PC that had a squad of infantry in there. There was 12 people in that squad, and that made up, those 4 parts made up the platoon. And there was 3 platoons and a headquarters in a troop. Is what it was. So. And we would do some training at Fort Riley, maneuvers and that sort of thing, and then the basic trainings and to go to the rifle range and do the different things that you did.
So how many times did you go back and forth to California while you were in service?
I went 4 times.
And all 4 times taking troops?
No. Twice. Once I went out with a convoy, and once I came back with a convoy. And we only took the train 1 time. The other time they flew us in a military air transport. Except one time there was some kind of a mix-up, so we had to go through the regular airport at LA International. And it was an interesting time because when we traveled, you had full combat gear on with your rifle and the whole thing, and so we marched into this airport and up to board the plane, and of course they wouldn't let us on the plane because we can't have weapons on a plane. But after a few hours of negotiation, the higher-ups apparently got him to agreed to let us get on the plane, and we had to check the rifles 3-4 times to be sure they were empty, and then got on the plane and we put them underneath the seats and flew to Manhattan, Kansas.
No brass or ammo, right?
No brass. No. So, just one of the interesting times that you run into in that Army experience. So
On any of them planes that you flew on, were tanks loaded into them at any time?
No. They were just for
Troop
first
carriers?
Hawaiian Airlines, I think is what it
Okay.
said on them, but you know they had a contract to transport troops for the Army,
Right.
and so we were just part of that, and they landed right at Fort Orland. Our airstrips out in the desert were just dry lake beds, is what they were, and they landed the planes right there, and we loaded up and flew to Manhattan, Kansas, which is right outside of Fort Riley, and then we were home.
Okay.
So, anyway,
So while you were in Fort Riley, most of the time was training.
just training.
Just training.
Yeah, training. Fort Riley was what they called an open post at that time because they were rotating the battle groups into Germany for about 6 months, and then they battle group would come back, and then another one would go, and so it was the Army wasn't segregated at that time, but the communities and there was segregation around, and there was a lot of concern by some of the members of the Manhattan community. They didn't like mixed marriages and stuff like that, and so sometimes when these soldiers, as part of the battle group, were in Germany for a while, maybe they married a German girl or something, and so there were only certain parts of Manhattan that they could live in. And we had a first-hand experience with that because my wife is born and raised in Norway, and she has an accent. And so on one of my trips out there, she had come back to Manhattan early and was going to get an apartment, and so that we could get settled in
Apartment in
Manhattan,
in
because
Manhattan.
we did not live on post. And they would not rent her apartment until they saw her husband. They were, like I said, there was.
So it wasn't just African Americans that they were prejudiced against, they were also prejudiced against
Well, yeah.
everybody that talked funny.
Well, yeah, they didn't know. They didn't know because they had experience with a number of these girls from Germany who had accents.
Mhm.
And so, based on that, they didn't want to make a mistake. I guess maybe I shouldn't even say it that way, but anyway. So I had a number of events that happened while I was in the service that just worth talking about a little bit. Probably the one that had impact on us in the service, but I don't know if the civilian population really appreciated what happened, was the Cuban Crisis. And I was at home and listened to the president's speech, and then the next morning when I went to work, there were people in my unit that were gone. They had come and gotten him during the night, and they were part of an advance party that was in Florida, getting ready to receive us if we were to be deployed over there.
For the history buffs, Bruce, this is what year, 1962?
This is it must have been 62. Yes,
Mhm.
it was October in 62, right? And I went to work, and we immediately were loading all our vehicles on railroad cars. And I understand that later on I heard that we were scheduled to go to the West Coast. And so I don't know if they why we were not going to Florida, but anyway, we were scheduled to go to the West Coast, and we were loaded up, and we waited for 3-4 days before that. I couldn't talk to anybody, and so I couldn't even call my wife and tell her what was going on. But later on that day, a young soldier showed up and asked for all my clothes and things, and he gathered them up and brought them to me, and so she was really in the dark for a few days until there was
That'd
a
be a little
stand
bit
down.
nerving, yeah.
Yeah. But see, I don't think the civilian population really understood what we were going through in the military at that time. So, anyway, another interesting thing to me was that Fort Riley was the original cavalry post. It's where they trained cavalry officers back in the day when we had horses and stuff like that in the service. And the last cavalry horse that the Army still owned was at Fort Riley, Kansas. And because we were the cavalry unit, the 4th Cav of the 1st Reconnaissance Squadron, we had to maintain a firing squad, and the colonel's speech was written and say we're waiting on the horse to die. And it did not die while we were there, but when I did go back some years later, there was a big statue of the horse in the cemetery, and they apparently had the ceremony when the horse passed away. Every unit has an organization day too, and so we were scheduled to have one, and so as we got ready to do that, the idea came, well, maybe we should have because it's the cavalry post, and there's a cavalry horse, maybe we should have that horse for our organization day, our birthday. So I went down to see the post veterinarian who was in charge of the horse. He was a major, and asked him if we could have the horse up there. And they had a padded trailer that they hauled him around to different doings and stuff like that. And he said, "Sure, we can do that. What are you going to do up there?" I said, "Well, we'll have this, and we'll have a parade a little bit, and what's going to be in the parade?" "Well, our jeeps and our tanks." "Our tanks? No way is that horse going down there." He said, "That horse is going to die." He said, "And if he dies when I'm the post veterinarian, I'm all done in the Army." So he wasn't going to take any chance. Just thought that was kind of a funny thing. We did have one bad incident out there in California that I recall. When you got a lot of tanks over a trail, it gets to be a lot of humps in the trail, and so it's up and down, up and down, up and down.
Moguls.
Yeah, and when you don't, you either have to have a commander that sits up on top of the tank and a driver, so that the commander can help that driver see what's ahead of him or anything. Or otherwise, if you don't have a commander, you got to have what they call a ground guide. That he walks alongside the tank so that the driver can see him, and then he helps the driver to see what's around. Well, they were moving a tank over to Ordnance or someplace, and the the tank commander was in the turret up in the top of the tank and guiding the driver. And as they were going over those tank trails, it was the tank was lurching, and so the guy that was up in the turret, he reached out over in the loader's hatch to grab on to steady himself, and the safety mechanism on the loader's hatch was not working, and the hatch came over and hit this kid, and it killed him.
So when they hit a bump?
Yeah, because of safety latch. And so we had a colonel that was had to be involved in everything, and he wanted to see just how this accident had happened. And so he got the same driver, and they were going over the same area, and the tank was lurching, and the colonel reached out to steady himself, and then the latch was still not fixed, and it cut his fingers off.
Really?
So tough deal on that kid that was driving. He'd lost 2 people now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was kind of a tragic thing that happened.
Were the ones up in a turret, were they usually an officer or a sergeant or?
Yeah, that's the leadership position. That's the one that, we always rode up there, on top of the tank. And, there's 4 people in the tank, the driver, the gunner, the loader, and then the tank commander. The only other thing is that the last 6 months I was there, then they had taken a lot of the senior leadership out of the different units, and I think they were sending them to Vietnam. That thing was just starting at that time. All our cadre had been to Vietnam as advisors early on, and so they were sending them back, and so we were short on officers in the unit, and so for the last 6 months I was a troop commander, same thing as a company commander, even though I was only a first lieutenant.
So you had advanced from second to first lieutenant?
It's automatic, unless you really screw up. It's automatic after 18 months to go from second to first lieutenant. And I was first lieutenant then. So I was troop commander for the last 6 months that I was in the service. And at that also, my unit got there was a competition, an annual competition, and for armor leadership, and so my unit got the armor leadership award. But that was not due to mine; it was due to the captain that was there prior to me, Captain Pepin. He was the one that really should have credit for that, but I was the one there at the time that it was given out. So, but I can't take credit for that. But
But you were recognized for it?
Yeah, well, that was part of it. Yeah, yes, we were. Yeah. So all in all, the service was a good experience. Certainly introduced you to a lot of things, and I think the basic training was good, and everybody should go through that. And I think that's too bad we don't have the draft. I think that was one of the strengths of the draft.
You're not the first to say that.
Is that it's a good way for young men to mature and help to decide what they want to do with their life.
So when you were done, you came out as a first lieutenant, and then you came home and...
I came home and joined my dad on the farm. That's what I did, yeah. And I've been here ever since.
Farm for how many years?
Well, I came back in '63, and I quit farming a few years ago, of course, because got some medical concerns. But other than that, I've been here on the farm all my life. Here.
So anything else you want to add, Bruce, to your years in the service?
No, like I said, it's just been a good experience.
And Bruce, you've been an outstanding citizen for the community of Stephen, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Keith.